Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. It's Ally Nitschke, your host, and I am joined by a wonderful and very special guest. Hello, Celeste, and welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Made for More podcast. I'll be sharing my experiences along with some actionable advice to take your leadership to the next level. Introducing your host, it's me, Ally Nitschke. I'm a leadership and courageous conversations expert, a Nutella lover, a mother of 4 young boys, a wife, and a dance floor junkie. I'm here to give you the motivation you need to level up, lead yourself, lead your team, and your business. Let's go.
Hello, Ally. Thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. Now, we won't rehash some of the things. We've just been gas bagging for the last little minute, catching up on all things leadership and our favourite topics. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, and I was hoping that you could share with our listeners and those who are watching on the YouTube channel, is all around your expertise and something that you're particularly passionate about. But before we get into that, can you tell me a little bit about where did you come from and where are you going?
Absolutely. Well, my whole obsession with connection began when I was living and working in London. And I had run away to London from a bad relationship in Australia. I'm sure we've all done that. And somehow ended up in the biggest job I'd ever had or ever planned to have, running the UK's largest social healthcare provider. So they did learning disability, mental health, and substance misuse. And because I was so passionate about all the areas the business was supporting, I was desperate to make it work and to make it as successful, make the business as successful as it could be, to help as many people as it could help. And part of the reason that my passion had been so lit was that before I ran away from Australia, at the tender age of 32, I believe, I'd been told I could never have children. And it rocked me. I'd done years, I think, of IVF, spent all the money, had every procedure. And at only 32, they said to me, you're the anomaly. It's unexplained infertility. It's never going to happen. We've tried everything. You need to go and figure out what to do from here, like what you want to do with the rest of your life. So I ran away to London. And when I was in London and doing this job, you can imagine how great it was for me, because I could pour myself into something that I felt had such meaning. It was contributing to the world in such a great way. But I'd also always said I never wanted a job where people's lives were on the line, and people's lives were well and truly on the line in this job. So the stakes were really high. So I was working really hard and I was really tired and feeling not 100%. And I was one day sitting in London's business district, which if you've ever been there is full of towering grey buildings.
Yeah.
And I was watching people return to work after their lunch breaks. And it was summer, so people were quite chipper. And I watched person after person walk through the huge revolving doors in these big business buildings. And as they walked through the doors, I'd watch them crumple in on themselves, literally physically crumple in.
Yeah.
Often looking at their phones. And it occurred to me that they were checking their souls out on the way back into work.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen it. We've all felt it. So I just had this epiphany, that work was sucking the soul out of us, and that we needed to change the way that work worked. And we needed to find a way so that people could bring their whole brilliant lit up selves to work. And probably I had that epiphany because I had, 6 months into this huge job of my life, also just found out that I was pregnant. Completely unexpectedly, with no medical intervention.
Surprise.
Just a surprise out of the blue. And I think it really started that whole idea that I didn't want this child to grow up into a world where that's the way that work worked. And really, that's where the whole thing started.
My goodness, I love that. And I think there's so many opportunities when we do actually just sit back and observe and exactly just put our phone away and go, what is going on in the world around me? And we get stuck in the rat race, and whether it's the rat race going around, like a clock, or whether it's the rat race going through a revolving door. And it sometimes takes one of those sliding door moments where you find out, oh, geez, I'm going to be responsible for the next leaders of the world. In fact, I'm growing one right now. Let's really make a ding in the world. So one of the areas that you said you're obsessed with is around that connection.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. So this was, you're 32, you're like, yes, I'm obsessed with connection. I imagine in that industry, people were deeply connected to helping others. Special people find themselves in healthcare. The work that healthcare does is absolutely phenomenal, but it's not for everyone. And it is for people who are deeply passionate around the well-being of others. So tell me a little bit more around your obsession with connection.
Well, connection kind of emerged for me. As I looked at what was wrong with work and why wasn't work working, definitely I saw a lot of people just didn't feel meaning and fulfillment in what they were doing. They didn't have a sense of purpose. So a lot of the work felt meaningless to them. And right about not sort of too long after all of that, there was talk that started globally around a loneliness epidemic, which ended up being kind of put into print by Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General for Obama, who went into his job thinking he'd have to look at obesity, cancer, and diabetes as the three biggest health crises, that were facing America, and actually realized after his time in office that the biggest issue facing the world, biggest health issue facing the world is loneliness.
Yeah, geez.
And the impact of loneliness physically, like it literally shortens your life, cuts years off it, and it affects your immune system. It affects your ability to recover from disease and illness. In fact, connection is the number one factor in thriving physically, socially, professionally. And, loneliness has the same physical toll as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Holy moly.
It's very disturbing when you start looking at it. And the way our world works now is that we are more disconnected than we've ever been. We're more connected on our devices. We can get information the way ways we've never been able to before. We're connected with hundreds of people, but we're not having real, genuine connection where, we're in relationship with each other. We're being changed by each other, and we're losing connection with who we are authentically as well, and what we want and what our values are.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think you've really just knocked the nail on the head when we talk about a loneliness pandemic. As you know, my area of expertise is around communication, and I think we're terrible at communicating compared to how we used to be.
Yeah.
A couple of decades ago, at least, because now we're texting, we're tagging, we're tweeting, we're not actually having a conversation. In fact, you might have come across this as well when we talk about Gen Z entering the workforce now, and they're asked to make a phone call. Many of them don't even know how to do that. And a lot of the connection is, around FaceTiming, as opposed to why don't we go and have a face-to-face conversation where you and I can do something at the same time and not be on our devices. When it comes to the lonely pandemic, I know you mentioned about Vivek. What kind of era was this, pre or post pandemic? And do you think it's shifted and accelerated things?
Just before, I think. And in fact, he wrote it as it was emerging. So he was talking about COVID and the amazing positive impact it had, bear with me, in terms of we saw these incredible examples of community pulling together. Yeah. We also saw horrific examples like the toilet paper thing in Melbourne. It was terrifying, where people were like hoarding food and so frightened. But I don't think, if you weren't in one of the cities like we were that were so heavily locked down, you didn't really see those extremes either way. We had a local community thing where everybody was assigned an older person who was too scared to leave their homes to make a phone call to them. So they had some level of human connection every week. And similarly, we were terrified to walk past each other on the street for a long time, and literally had to wear masks walking on the beach, even if there was no one. Yeah. So, it was incredibly connecting at the start and then incredibly disconnecting post.
Yeah. I was speaking to someone from the States about this actually, and it was, in real time unfolding in her in her state, and she was saying, well, it's essentially people had been conditioned to think that the people around them were basically weapons. You might actually catch something from someone and, oh my goodness. So where do you think, where do you think people need to be focusing now on overcoming the loneliness pandemic? One question, can we overcome it? And is there a way forward? But two, when we're recognizing that people are desperate, and I'm hearing this with my clients as well, they're looking for community, they're looking for connection, even in their workplaces. What's next for them?
Yeah, well, I'm writing a book on that very matter, Ally, so I can talk for hours on that particular topic. But I've been teaching a model for the last however many years around helping leaders, but helping anyone to reconnect with themselves.
Yeah.
And the model's made up of, it's called the Connected Leader System, and it's made up of 3 components. And to me, all the research I've done, it's really clear that before we can even think about connecting with other people, we need to figure out who we are. We need to connect with ourselves.
Yeah.
What are my values? What's the kind of leader I want to be? Who is the human that I'm building every day?
Yep.
We've got to acknowledge that our brains are completely plastic, and that our intelligence, our creativity, nothing's fixed. We get to choose, including our personality. So figuring out who we were before the world told us who we should be. And the world is forever telling us who we should be. We should be like this, and this is the role you should play, and this is what good looks like. And we're scurrying around trying to live into these completely unrealistic roles, and just divorced from any sense of who I was before I was told I should be this.
My goodness. And do you find, when you think about finding yourself, I certainly did this in my 20s, went backpacking around Australia to go through my, in air quotes, find myself era. And I saw something really recently around raising children so that they don't have to do that because they're already happy with where they are now.
Yeah.
What do you think's stopping people from either recognizing that or even going sort of outside the tribe and going, that's not for me anymore?
I think it's fear.
Yeah.
So we are indoctrinated into this culture of busyness and more. And we are now being fed, it's not just billboards and cinemas and TVs like it used to be. We are carrying the advertising and the influencing around in our pockets, always being told that this curated life is what our life should look like, never measuring up, and everything's always put back onto us, that if you just worked harder, if you just did the work and found your purpose, found your why, and just became better and got up at 5 a.m. and trained for an hour and journaled, if you just did all of that, then everything would be fine. But what we're not doing is saying, who was I to begin with?
Yeah.
Before I started building up all this armor to be able to project into the world what everyone's telling me I should be, it's a bit like there's a quote by Michelangelo which says something like, when people said to him, how do you sculpt these incredible realistic figures in marble? And he would say something like, I don't sculpt the person, I just remove the excess stone.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of us. We've built up these layers, and a lot of what I do with leaders and with clients is I help them go back to, what were you like when you were that shiny, fierce 4-year-old? Think of a photo of yourself and really picture it. In fact, I published one on, the socials the other day that I found. My mum died a few years ago, and I found this photo in her house just the other day. We were clearing it out, and I was 4 years old in the photo. And I'm dreamy in the photo. I'm very in my head, full of imagination. This wasn't there then. I technically profile as an introvert, not that anyone would ever pick it, because this is what I've been taught to be,
Yeah.
And when I look back at that very fierce 4-year-old, it helps me remember who I was, and what I want to recover of myself. So really figuring out that wild, clear, shiny-eyed child that you were held important things that we need to reconnect to, as well as then figuring out, who do I want to pick to be? What are my values now? Who do I admire? And how do I, move my life and the way that I'm being more towards that?
Yeah. How liberating to be able to shed the stuff that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And then add in the stuff that you do want to aspire to and start embodying that from a sense of being. And I mean, you and I both work with leaders around sort of some of that identity stuff, but even the exhaustion factor of trying to spin all the plates, keep all of the facades, and keeping track of it all, it must be so liberating for leaders to go, yeah, I'm going to go back to the fierce and feisty 4-year-old, and who is that, and who do they want? Oh, who do they need me to be right now?
Yeah. And the people around you, they conspire, not deliberately. No one's doing it deliberately, but we like to have people in the boxes that they've been created in for us. And when they want to morph and change, it's quite hard sometimes to really keep true to, I talk in my book about figuring out your internal GPS.
Love it.
One we've been given, which is our value set of busyness and visual success that we keep being told we should have. But actually, what really moves me, what's meaningful to me, where do I get fulfillment? The second part of the model is connecting with meaning and purpose. And I have such a problem with this whole self-help thing about everybody has to have a big capital P purpose. Otherwise, they're failing at life. There's more books on it than anything. And the science is clear that having meaning and purpose transforms the stress you feel at work, if it's at work you feel it, into a very different vibe. You feel like you're living into your life. You feel like you're leveraging your strengths. You're making a contribution and a difference. So it's great to have meaning and fulfillment. It just doesn't have to be a capital P, change the world on my own purpose. It can be, I love bringing, the potential of my team out. I love creating a psychologically safe space where people can really take risks. I love creating a connected culture where, people are learning and growing and honest and able to have gritty conversations and not be so polite and really develop at work, not play nice political games.
And how much time would we save if we didn't have to go through the political muck and navigating some of the workplace policies and politics and just go, actually, we're all trying to steer the boat in the same direction. What do we need to get rid of to be able to do that? And what do we need to add in to be able to do that instead of playing smoke and mirrors all the time? Oh, goodness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then talk to me about the last part of the connected leader system. So we've got self and we've got meaning and purpose.
Yeah, the last part is the part everyone thinks I come in to teach them, which is the others part.
Yeah, right.
But really, you need to know who you are, the kind of leader you want to be, what your values are. And our values have shifted post-COVID. I do values and injury work all the time with leadership teams, and they're often quite shocked with what they're really prioritizing and what they think they're prioritizing. And then figuring out where you get meaning and fulfillment and flow and leverage your strengths at work. After that, you can start thinking about connecting with other people, and whether that's one-on-one or working, with groups of people. If you're leading a team or you're leading an organization, really a lot of it is about what I call being connect-withable.
Connect-withable. Ooh.
Yeah, it's a Celeste word, but I'm going to get it in the dictionary. It will be there. It's going to happen.
Do it.
So
Love it.
Being connect-withable is about being a connected leader who creates connected teams and connected cultures. And the 3 parts of the system that I haven't talked about are alignment. So that's about really knowing who I am and that what I do and how I lead lines up with who I'm trying to be.
Yes, love that. Yeah.
It's about authenticity. So being able to lean into vulnerability. My caveat always on authenticity is when people say, I can speak to you that way, I'm direct, I'm just being authentic. Authenticity is not a license to treat people however you want. We have to be so conscious of how we're impacting other people and what they need and how to communicate well with them and connect with them. But we need to come from a place of where we know who we are first.
Yep.
And then the last part is about where we put our attention. Because we're so caught up, thinking about ourselves and our to-do lists and our tasks, playing the political game, getting ahead, that if we just slowed ourselves down and connected in here and remembered the stuff that is really meaningful to us, then we switch our attention from in here to the noise out to the other person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tool I teach them for that is one of the tools came out of the health service in London, where they were trying to figure out how to teach surgeons bedside manner.
Because, no easy feat.
No easy feat. You were talking about the health system before. And they used this phrase, which I just grabbed onto and have used ever since, because it's so much deeper than, active listening or any of those terms. And it's to listen with fascination.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I love everything about it. I love the demeanor. When I joke about sometimes when I'm keynoting on Connection, and I joke about listening with fascination, that everyone can remember a time in their lives where somebody was hanging on their every word, where they were tuned in with their bodies, listening beyond what was being said for the meaning and really seeing them, that feeling of being seen, heard, and valued for who you authentically are. That's our deepest human need. And the running joke for me is the one time that really happened, this resulted, was the exit date. And that, I think that ability to help other people be seen and to be seen and heard yourself is really what Listen with Fascination is all about.
Do you know, when you just said that, and the reason I was like, oh my gosh, mic drop moment is, as you know, I've got a number of tiny people at home, and they tell me a lot of stuff, as probably do your children as well. There's a lot of information that you get that you're like, I'm sure this is really exciting as a 6-year-old, but it's not that exciting for me. But when I stop and drop and go, okay, what are they trying to tell me? My children just get spurred on. And the other day, my firstborn son, he spent nearly 45 minutes trying to explain the Magic the Gathering game to me. So it's like a card game. It's very complex, but it's his passion piece. And the more that I gave him my 100% attention, the more he was like, and then mum, then what happens? And then we do this. And it had this beautiful dialogue and connection that I'd kind of been fobbing off because I was in the middle of, making dinner normally when he's telling me about it. And now that you've said that, this listen with fascination, the same as if we give our children their 100% of our attention. They're like, oh, somebody's watching me. What else can I share?
Yeah, because I'm being seen. Not what I'm saying. Yes. That this person wants to be with me. They're creating space for me. I think it's, especially with the digital way that we communicate now, it's the biggest gift you can give anyone. And I think it's one of the hardest things. I find it hard to do. I'm a million miles an hour, exactly the same with you, constantly doing different things, thinking 100 things. And for me, it's a physical state thing. I have to drop into a place where I am slowing myself right down and just delaying whatever my stuff is, kind of putting it on pause so that I can really be with the other person. But it's a practice. Like I catch myself all the time fobbing the children off and not really listening to something. And I think, when you actually can do it, it's profound, the difference it can make.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head again around going, it's a practice. Like we all of a sudden think, oh, we should just be able to turn off and refocus, but we can't, because we have got a million things on our minds. We are constantly distracted, whether it's via social media or our phones or someone else needing our attention. But to deliberately and intentionally go, okay, I'm going to shut out the noise and the chatter, listen with fascination, focus in on you.
Yeah.
It's like going to the gym, right? Like the first time you do it, you're probably going to be rubbish, but at some stage you're going to build up that capacity and that muscle to be able to go, Yeah.
And it's a physical capacity as much as anything else. I couldn't agree more. I think, I often talk with leaders about how you create space, because we're going so fast and there are so many demands on our time and attention. And we're actually quite uncomfortable with sitting. Just sitting now, because we just reach for the comfort, just like I do, picking up my phone, distracting myself. So that those periods of non-distracted time of focus can feel really awkward to begin with, on your own or with another person. And I think that's one of the key things we've got to battle through, and just give ourselves a bit of compassion around that. It's going to feel a bit awkward to start. And so, how can I coach myself to just increase my window of tolerance?
Ooh, boom. Increase your window of tolerance. I love that. That's so good. And I think one of the things, and you touched on this earlier when you were talking about your stint in London and going, people's lives did depend on it. But for most and many leaders these days, they can sit quietly, they can slow down, they can even, goodness, heaven forbid, have a day off, and nobody's going to die.
Yeah.
We can slow down,
slow
down, speed up. And, how often, and you run these as well, those times where you get people in a room to do a strategy day or focus on their values, and it's not a day working not a day working in the business and getting stuff out the door, but it gives them such a clear launch pad to go, okay, now we're pointing ourselves in the right direction. Everyone's on board, and we've had this beautiful connection. And we know that that's really where those results happen from a leadership and performance perspective, is when we go, okay, I trust the person next to me. I trust that my team can do what they can do around them.
Yeah. I mean, I often talk about slowing down to speed up.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, because, I think the way that we do these hour-long back-to-back incessant meetings, like I would literally be stabbing myself in the face with a fork to sit through a full day of business now, where it's just, there's no gaps, there's no breaks. And, and then I've got just email after email, there's just constant noise coming at me. You can't be productive. You can't be attention out. You can't be connected with yourself because you're constantly being pulled in 100 directions. And just, it's like being in the ocean, like hit by wave after wave, and you lose how to get back to land. You can't even see it because you're just being smashed around constantly by the external weather, not your own.
That's so true. And I think when you do have back-to-back meetings or back-to-back, whatever it happens to be, you probably spend the last 15 minutes of the previous one thinking about the future one. So you're not even really
residue. There's an actual term for it.
I haven't heard that. I love it. Attention residue.
Attention residue is actually 15 minutes in an hour-long meeting. For the first 15 minutes of the next meeting you go into, you're thinking about, why did they say that to me? I should have said this, and what do I have to do? And that was weird, and all the things that aren't the people in front of you, and the issue in front of you. I talked about being connect withable as that part of that connecting with others. Really a key part of the stuff that I teach is about the fact that within 3-4 minutes, without saying a word, even remotely, we physiologically sync up with each other. So our mood, our behavior, the culture, what we're role modeling, it's contagious. And on our bad days where we are stressed and disconnected and not in our own bodies, we are spreading bad stuff to our teams. We're actually spreading a performance decrease, a resilience decrease. It decompresses our intelligence and creativity by about 30% when we're in that stressed, negative, neutral zone. So figuring out like how you can get to your so much of its state. How can I get to a place where I feel calm, connected, and super clear that I'm intentional about every meeting I'm having? I know what it's for. I know what we're doing. And that what I'm spreading is something I want people to catch, and that I'm conscious of what they're spreading to me, and I get to pick whether I catch it or not.
Yeah, whether you absorb it or just, it's not for you. I love that. So the loneliness epidemic, you've got your connected leaders system. Are we going to get out of the loneliness epidemic, do you think? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, the book and where we are now moving our business to is all focused on what we're calling the Reconnection Revolution.
Love it.
And we want to create a world full of people who are able to be their most brilliant, lit up selves, people who are connected with themselves, with meaning and purpose, and who can have deep connections with other people and feel comfortable and able to do that. So I think a lot of it is practical skills that we've forgotten how to do. So just like the awkwardness of face-to-face in-human stuff, when we've got, very used to a technical remote space, it feels a bit weird. And we just have to take control of these small 1%ers and build them up over time.
I love it. Yeah, I think the Reconnection Revolution, I'm available for that. So
you can join.
let's revolt and get people on board this new. We talk about the Industrial Revolution, stuff that. Let's get back to the Reconnection Revolution and get people back on track and loving the work that they do, but also, the community that they're in and the people that they're around and those that they influence day in and day out. Oh, I loved today's chat. Celeste, now, what would be your top 5 tips for leaders, either new ones joining the ranks or something that you wish you knew way back when you're a baby leader?
The first thing I would say is have a look at that connected leader system. It is on our website if you want to look at it in more detail, which is really thinking about how you want to connect with yourself, who you authentically are, your values, etc. Where do you get meaning and purpose in your work? What is the thing that lights you up and how do you create space to do more of that?
Yeah.
And then connecting with others, remember that you are contagious and think about what you're wanting to spread and also being conscious about what you're wanting to not catch. In the model as well, I'm going to cheat and give you 3 extra. I talked about authenticity, alignment, and attention. So within that model, that's 6. So I'm cheating instead of 5. But it's a really clean way to just look at each piece and think about how can I do that? How can I implement that?
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. So is that all 5? It's all in the Connected Leaders?
It's all in that Connected Leader system.
Magic, and that is on your website. So I'll put the links to that in the show notes. Now, where do you like to hang out? If people have enjoyed this chat, and I'm sure they have, where can they find you? Where do you play?
They can find us on LinkedIn. We publish a newsletter on LinkedIn as well. And we have our own called the Connected Collective, which is going out every week and gives very practical leadership advice around all this stuff.
Brilliant.
We've also started our Instagram
IG
Revolution. So we'd love you to come and play with us there. And we always say the same thing. We want to know what people want to hear. So please connect and tell us what you want to see more of.
Fabulous. I have absolutely enjoyed today's chat. Thank you so much for sharing your area of expertise on connection, as well as sharing some of the insights around the loneliness pandemic. I can't wait to see what the Reconnection Revolution has in store.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Ally.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode on the Made for More podcast, please make sure you subscribe to receive future episodes. And of course, 5-star reviews are always welcome on the Apple podcast. If you'd like a copy of the show notes or any of the links mentioned today, check out madeformore.com.au/podcast. And of course, if we aren't connected already, you can find me in all the usual places. Ally Nitschke on LinkedIn, ally.madeformore on Facebook and Instagram. I hope you have an awesome week, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye-bye.